Hello, welcome back to the channel. In today's video we're going to do some more work on the Renault 9. I'd like to look at the brakes on this because we've never actually had the wheels off since we got the car, and if we've got time later, do you remember those noisy rear wheel bangs? We'll have a look at those as well. So I'm going to bring the car forward onto the tarmac so I've got something to jack up on that's safe, and then let's get the wheels off and have a look. Right, let's get this wheel off. That was alarmingly easy. So why am I doing this? Well, I've not actually had the wheels off since I got this car, so we need to just look at the state of the calipers, the brake pads, whether they need changing, the brake hoses, what state are they in. So it'd be a good idea just to take it all apart, give it a wire brush, clean it up, maybe re-grease the brake pads, the back of the brake pads, and just generally give it a going over and a light service. Because if I'm going to keep this car, I'll make sure it's roadworthy. So best thing to do first is to find a solid place to jack the car with, and then we can get the wheel off. Not before we loosen the wheel bolts. Remember to do that first, guys. Right. I think we can resort to a socket now. Get carried away. Let's find somewhere safe to jack the car. Is there anything soldered under here? Just hope it's not gone a bit too soft under there, but we'll listen out for crunches. That was just the jack. So once I've got the car up in the air, I'm going to put an axle stand underneath the front subframe just to take the weight off the sill, because I don't like the idea of leaving it jacked up on potentially a weak spot, because I don't know how solid the sills are. And this corner does look a bit sketchy, so we'll just go easy, guys. Well, I've got a pair of gloves to do this job. Oh well, no I didn't. Because I'm working on the driveway on the slope, I've got the whole car sort of leaned towards me, which isn't ideal really. But I put the axle stand under the engine mount, which is attached to the engine, which is attached to the car, so that should be alright. It's not going anywhere. Well, it can't go anywhere. Unless the sill case in, of course. What on earth is going on there? Is that factory? Hey? Of course things look alright. I'll bring you in a second, yeah, go have a look. Not bad. In fact, actually, pretty good. So the coil spring looks okay. Can't see any cracks. The strut tower's alright. They normally break off on that tail, but that's okay, that's alright. That was a sort of what the hell moment, because I've not seen a rubber mount like that before, but I presume that's factory. Brake part going into the soft line doesn't look too bad. In fact, it looks like it come apart nice and easily. Just put that to the lamp there a second. Hose doesn't look too bad. The brakes work, so I know that everything's in fairly good order. Caliper seems okay. Gaiters aren't split or perished. That boot looks alright on the drive shaft. Cross member's all good. Steering rack gaiter, that appears to be alright. Yeah. Let's give it a bit of a clean up anyway, it won't do any harm. Well, I was expecting to see how far there are a few splits in that boot. That's a shame. Put some grease on that and clear that up a bit. Okay, so you can see got a bit of an oil leak from the drive shaft indicator. That's standard. There is some cracking and perishing to the gator, but it's not gone through. Drive shaft gator, a few cracks, it's beginning to split. The bottom ball joint gator looks alright. Brake caliper slider boots on the got slider pins for the pistons there, or for the carrier I should say. They're fine. Loads of life left in those pads. Bit of scoring to the discs, but they're serviceable. What was that track or boot I was showing you? Yeah, I'm happy with that. Right, I'll finish up cleaning up. We'll button it back up and do the other side. Lovely. And I'm delighted to say it's a similar story on the other side. Everything is really good order. The boots are good, drive shaft gator isn't split. Even got some of the original factory Renault sticker coming through there. So that's a genuine original shock. Tie bar mount boot is good. No lipping on the disc. In fact, the discs are really not much used. So I'm going to continue cleaning this side up. We'll button it back together. But before I do that, I have discovered something that might throw the MOT. So like I was saying, the coil springer seems to be alright. There's no cracking or perishing. We'll still with a wire brush at some point. But I've just found this hole, and that is within 30 centimetres of a structural mount. So that is an MOT fail, unfortunately. But quite a straightforward patch for any welder. Just sort of fabricate something into shape, and I imagine if I poke that it will go through. But lucky we caught that in time. That will be getting done. But as for the rest of the car, the inner arches are all good. Inner wings, sorry. Front chassis legs and crossmember are absolutely rock solid. There's no rot on those at all. So that's something I could get some wax or maybe some old engine oil just to help protect at some point, because yeah, absolutely solid. Just surface rust there, nothing to worry about. Right, let's get this button back together and have a look at the back end of the car. Should we try jacking on the sill? What could go wrong? No, I'm not going to do that. Now why did it... oh, it's there. While I'm doing this, I have been periodically shaking the wheels onto the back on the car to check for play in the wheel bearings, and the first wheel we did, that passenger side front, there was quite a bit of play. I don't know whether it was the drive shaft, the wheel bearing or the hub. There's a lot of noise out here this morning, go away. It's really solid under here. noticed this as well. Doing this dog. How can you not? Help me to understand. Can't see nothing. Thank you. Okay, that was difficult. Sorry about that. I was just putting an axle stand under the rear. I guess it's what you call a cross tube. Check for wheel play. Not a sausage. There's always one, isn't there? I'll show you that boot floor in a second because it is in amazing condition. Really, really clean, guys. Right, let's get this wheel off. Goodbye. And there you have it. Look at that fuel tank there, just suspended. I like how that's just a plastic pipe into a rubber pipe into a metal tank. So all good round this swing arm and the mounting areas of the rear axle. That's all good. Boot floor, bit of surface corrosion, but really, really good, guys. The exhaust, despite the fact it looks a bit manky, is actually in pretty good order. That's just surface rust. I've got a completely new system for that anyway, but we're going to concentrate on the rear brakes now. Have a look at those. Right. What we'll do, because that's easily accessible. Right, so while it's all apart, it'll be daft not to have a look behind that grease cap. We'll get the drum off if we can, without too much work. I presume you meant to use these flat edges. Knock the cap off. You put a camera in the way. There we go. So we're going to get the drum off. That nut's got to come off because it comes apart with the bearing in the hub. I suppose we could have a go doing that, couldn't we? Let me get some tools. See if it'll come apart first. Right, I am back. 30mm socket's what you need for a rear hub bolt on a Renault 9. And this is a 1/2 inch drive with a 1/2 inch drive breaker bar. Like butter. Now when we put this back together, I'm going to have to refer to the Haynes Book of Lies for the torque settings for the bolt, because you don't want it too tight that it crushes the bearing, but you don't want it too loose so that your wheel falls off. Is this a good idea? Locking that. Then you've got a washer. I'll put some grease in this as well when it all goes back together. Right, that in theory, and shoes could do with adjusting, that in theory should be all that's holding the drum on, because they don't, some have a little Torx headed screw that retains it to the backing plate or the hub if you like, but that is all that appears to be keeping that in position. Right. course you might have to give a bit of a gentle persuasion. Just occurred to me I might need a hub puller, which I haven't got. Hadn't thought of that. That would make sense because the bearing's pressed onto the stud. Although the what's that word I'm looking for? Stub axle. So if that's the case, am I just being a pussy? Yes, I am being a pussy. There we go. Ha! You can all laugh at my misfortune. Right. So like I said, see, we learned something. This is informational television you're watching. We'll wash up the back there. We will grease the hell out of this, clean out the brake shoes, which actually don't look too bad. The wheel cylinder, that was another reason for taking the drum off, because we wanted to just check for leaks. I've not been losing any fluid, but then I haven't really been driving the car, so this all looks really, really clean, guys, and this is the first time it's been off for, could be decades. We'll clean all this up. Yeah, so the bearing on these isn't like my Allegro one where it's tapered and it comes apart in sections. This is pressed into the drum. So there's not a lot I can do with the bearing as it is. But we can grease the stub axle after we thoroughly degreased all of that and put it all back together, and then do the same on the other side. I might go and put the kettle on. Also, noisy bin lorries. So with the drum off I'm not able to put any load on the bearing, but a good indication that the bearing is worn is if you hear graunching noises, you do this. Nothing wrong with that at all, that's absolutely fine. No play in it. Beautifully smooth. So we'll clean all this up, re-grease it and pop it all back together. I'm going to go and put the kettle on. I don't know what you caught of that because the battery died on the camera and I didn't notice. What I was just explaining was you have to nip the nut up until the drum stops turning. That way you've gone just enough to compress it. Then you need to back it off a turn. I will now just check the torque wrench setting to make sure we're doing the job properly. Tighten the hub nut to the specific torque setting, but it doesn't say what it is. That's handy. Oh, incidentally, that's how the bearing is pressed into the drum there. Oh, there we are, beginning of the chapter. Hub bearing retain nut 160 Newton meters or 118 foot-pounds on the rear suspension, so 160. God, does the torque wrench go up to this? Yes. Lucky. 160 Newton meters. That's a lot, isn't it? I suppose it would be, wouldn't it? And that is the click you wanted, so that is now torqued up to spec. And we'll just refer to the book again, because I thought you had to back them off a turn, but it might not be the case on all bearings, in which case I just told you the wrong thing. So I was always told to tighten it up until the drum stops spinning, then back them off a turn to get the free play, but that might be the case of only floating bearings, which this isn't. No. Tighten the hub nut to the specific torque settings and tap the hub cap back into place. So, clearly says in the book, we've both learned something, I guess. Right, put some grease back in the cap, which probably isn't necessary because it's a seal bearing. We'll do it anyway, and we'll button this back together. Good job. Lovely. Right, I'm going to get cleaned up and do the other side. After my tea. Right, slightly different situation on this side. The drum has come off with a bit of force, but the bearings are meant to be pressed in, I believe, into the centre of the drum, have come out, leaving the back end bearing pinched up against the stub axle, and the remains of the front bearing here, which nothing's damaged and has fell apart, so I might just be able to re-grease it and gingerly put it all back together, making sure that I'm happy with it as I'm doing that. So I'm going to thoroughly clean everything up because there's quite a bit of brake residue in here. We'll check that everything's working, rotating as we put it back together, otherwise it's another situation for another day, which I'm trying to avoid at the moment because I'm trying to do this car on a budget. So first thing I'm going to do is clean up everything. Also, there's actually no shoe material on this side, so it's been dragging. It's a brand new shiny brake hose, so someone's definitely been in here, but how long ago? It could be done years ago and then laid up. I'm not going to take that off, I'm just going to... We'll see what it's like when it's back together, but it might be game over for this side, unfortunately. So the little roller bearings down doing their job. Yeah, that should be okay, that should be serviceable. A lot of pitting to this drum, but we'll give it a go. I've got nothing to lose really, have we? Okay. This is not the way to rebuild a wheel bearing, just to let you know. I'm doing it as an experiment, so... So I may as well leave that in until I'm ready to fit it. So at first I'm going to attempt to put the drum back on, see if it goes on there, of course, and locates on that bearing, because that's going to be the wiring bit. There we go. That's got that home. And you've got a little dust shield which just sits in there. The leaf in there, that's not going to help. So we'll put this back together, spin the wheel, and make sure we're happy with it. And if it's a complete write-off, we'll just order a new bearing and then get the drum off and press the new bearing in, but try and avoid that if we can. Right. So getting this lined up is going to be absolutely crucial. Bear in mind we need brake shoes on this side as well, so we're going to have to come back to this side if we end up keeping the car. Yeah, That sounds horrible. That'll be fine. I'm just going to operate the handbrake a couple of times because that might just be noise from the shoes or lack of shoes rather than the bearing itself, but we'll know when the wheel's back on. Well, I've operated the handbrake and that is stopping the rear wheel, so that's working at least. So I'll just get this wheel back on and see how much play we've got in the bearing. Oh, on the subject of the clutch, I think it is, I'm convinced it is now, the release bearing, because it periodically works after making quite a bit of noise on the transmission. So I sprayed some plus gas down the clutch fork area this morning with a vain attempt that it might do something. I don't think it has. But then it did make a bit of a noise, so maybe it has helped. And as you clearly saw, I was able to put the car into gear and move it back and forth. So dare we take this for a test drive around the block? Could do, I suppose. No play back and forth. No play top and bottom. I don't know what I'm hearing, whether it's wheel bearing. It doesn't. I think that's the drum rubbing on the shoe, because there was a lot of shoe lining material on the inside of the drum which I've not cleaned off. Proof will be in the test drive. I'll get my tools away. I'll see if there's enough camera battery to take you for a ride, and maybe we could go around the block if the clutch is working. Back in a sec. We have a clutch. Bearing hasn't got any better. No, completely lost gears again, and the indicator's great. I think, although I don't like to admit it, I'm going to have to park this car up until I can get the clutch done. And the wheel bearing. I think that's going to do it, unfortunately. Even if the release bearing is sticking, I can't drive it like this. Not sure what the outcome is going to be for this car, guys. I've done quite a bit of work to it already, but it really wants a clutch and really wants that wheel bearing doing. So I'm going to sit down and do some number crunching and work out whether it's worth putting some more money into this car. Do we sell it on as a project? If we do that, we're going to lose money. Or do we just persevere, put it to one side, and when I've got a few more quid saved up, get the clutch and the wheel bearing done? Part of me wants to keep this car because it is such a rare example. But I'm also excited by the idea of having somebody else as a project. So let me know what you think in the comments. That's going to do it for this video today, guys. Thanks ever so much for watching. Be back with more content soon. Right, clean up, cup of tea. See ya.